Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, July 12, 2023, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. Night drapes itself across the docks of Venice, where mist clings to the water's surface like a whispered secret. A lone motorcycle engine hums to life in a narrow canal lane, its rider's silhouette slipping through lamplight pools with the precision of a stalking cat. From this haze emerges a figure who needs no introduction, a disavowed agent whose name alone sends ripples through the clandestine world of espionage. His mission is no ordinary assignment but a race against time itself, one that will carry him across continents, from the frozen tundras of Iceland to the teeming streets of Rome, and into the very heart of a conspiracy with the power to redraw the boundaries of reality. At its core, this chapter picks up the shattered pieces of a digital codex, an algorithmic enigma known only as the key, whose fragments harbor a power so vast it could rewrite every transaction, every communication, every secret held close by nations and criminal syndicates alike. When the key becomes the ultimate prize in a lethal treasure hunt, our agent and his trusted team of operatives must chase its fragments through a labyrinth of betrayals. He'll face familiar faces, some allies, some betrayers, each connection laced with the thrum of shared history and the sting of past deceptions. A former handler turned rogue, a cyberwiz whose loyalties flicker like an overtaxed data stream, and an adversary whose secret past intertwines so tightly with the agent's own that their final reckoning promises to be as personal as it is apocalyptic. The film's introduction plunges us into ferocious action, with a train hurtling through the Alps while our hero dangles beneath its carriage, suspended above rocky abysses. The sequence rumbles with the thrill of impossibility, shifting cars, looping tracks, and the blur of winter landscapes, setting the tone for the perilous ballet to follow. From this white-knuckle prologue, we're catapulted into high-stakes rendezvous in desert strongholds and midnight infiltrations of fortified data vaults. Each locale offers its own color palette, the cold blue of glacier-lit caverns, the molten gold of sun-scorched sands, the neon pulse of shadowed metropolises, woven together by a score that crescendos with every brush past death. Along the way, whispered hints tease betrayals to come, a trusted confidant caught in a crossfire of shifting alliances, a symbol etched into an icy vault wall that echoes the agent's own fractured history, and a message scrawled in coded distress just before a facility self-destructs. The key's fragments seem alive, their digital signature pulsing like hidden heartbeats in a global network of surveillance. Allies we thought steadfast vanish into the maelstrom, replaced by new figures whose motives glitter in half-truths. Even as our hero deciphers each clue, the true mastermind remains tantalizingly out of reach, orchestrating every move like a chess grandmaster cloaked in digital shadow. True to the legacy of the IMF's most daring exploits, the journey crescendos in a sequence set on a magnetically charged monorail that scrapes the edge of a canyon at breakneck speed. Here, every door that shuts could be a trap, every corridor a corridor to oblivion. As nerves stretch to the limit, the agent must trust only his instincts and the unpredictable genius of his team to wrest the key from those who would weaponize it. Yet just when victory seems within grasp, the film delivers its most stunning twist, the revelation that the key's final fragment lies not beyond some fortress wall but inside the very institution that expelled him. In that moment, the chase becomes a reckoning, and the hunter becomes the hunted within his own circle. As the credits loom, questions blossom like fireworks. Who truly wields the power of the key? What secret gambit is the mastermind planning with those final digits? And can our agent reconcile his need for redemption with the cost that comes with unmasking a truth that could destroy the world's fragile balance of power? Strap in for a journey where every stunt defies physics, every alliance tests loyalty, and every revelation cracks open the foundation of trust. This is a film that doesn't just push boundaries, it detonates them, leaving us breathless and hungry for the sequel's promised conclusion. Morning light seeped through the slatted shutters of the safe house in Rome, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale air. Ethan Hunt rubbed his wrist where, only hours before, he'd pried open a reinforced vault door with nothing but a jammed syringe and sheer will. Staring at the scattered data drives glowing on the metal table, he knew this was only the opening gambit in a far greater game. The first fragment of the key, encrypted in military-grade algorithmic code, lay within his grasp, and with it came the threat that would pull him across continents in a deadly chase. A coded message crackled through his earpiece. The bank in Zurich, 0600 hours. Extraction is a go. Luther, his steadfast tech wizard, had traced the next fragment to a downtown vault beneath the city's famed Bahnhofstrasse. Emma, the newly recruited field operative whose loyalties flickered like a dying flame, perched outside in a blacked-out SUV. As Ethan assembled his gear, magnesium flares, a specialized hammer, a compact EMP device, he remembered the countless times he'd walked into impossible scenarios. But this mission already felt different. A sense of personal stake burned behind each encrypted clue. The streets of Zurich were calm at sunrise. Streetcars hummed, shopkeepers rolled shutters, joggers wove through tram tracks. Yet beneath the facade of normalcy lay a labyrinthine fortress of steel and concrete. Ethan scaled the side of the building with magnetic gloves, his silhouette a ghost against dawn's rosy glow. One misstep could send him plummeting, but he moved with the confidence of someone who defied gravity more times than he cared to count. Inside, motion sensors hummed to life, but Luther's EMP short-circuited their circuits. Ethan slipped past silent cameras, down a corridor whose walls pulsed with the hum of vault mechanisms. In the heart of the chamber, he found the fragment locked in a biometric safe, protected by iris scanners calibrated to the bank's director. A quick improvisation. Darting a microscopic moisturized contact over his eye, Ethan fooled the scanner and pried the fragment free. Moments later, the safehouse radio buzzed with a warning, helicopter inbound, armed. The bank's private security, triggered by an unseen alarm, had scrambled fully armed choppers. Outside, Emma gunned the engine, ready to race the rising blades toward Ethan's escape route. He burst through the vault door, data drive in hand, just as the floor beneath him began its rapid descent into a holding cell. Shots rang out. Heated rotor wash whipped doors ajar. Emma swept him up into the back seat, the SUV peeling away as security forces opened fire. Bullets ricocheted against armor plating. The city remained eerily indifferent as they tore through narrow alleys. Once clear of the downtown chokehold, Emma exhaled, her eyes flickering with relief and calculation. They'd won the fragment, but at what cost? Back at IMF headquarters, the brass gathered around a holodisplay flickering with the fragment's cryptic code. The key was not merely a databank but a living algorithm, a quantum cipher that could override every digital lock in the world. If reassembled, its power would eclipse nuclear codes and corporate vaults alike. Alan Hunley's voice, grave with urgency, cut through the tension. We have to secure every fragment before it falls into the wrong hands. Your next target, Glacier Bay, Iceland. The element of surprise is gone. Ethan's gaze sharpened. A rogue MI6 agent, Lucia St. John, had tipped the scales, her allegiances obscured by a personal vendetta. Now she pursued the same fragments, guided by her own agenda. Their flight to Reykjavik carried them over frozen seas, glaciers yawning beneath opaque clouds. Emma plotted a course to a decommissioned research station carved into a fjord's cliff face, one that had once housed prototype quantum servers. On arrival, the winds battered their blacked-out cargo helicopter, forcing a perilous landing on an ice shelf. Frost glittered like shattered glass underfoot as Ethan and Emma ascended narrow catwalks into the station's skeletal remains. The echo of their boots mingled with howling gusts outside. Inside, copper conduits snaked across walls, remnants of experimental cooling systems now useless in the Arctic chill. Luther's voice crackled in Ethan's ear, the fragments hidden behind a cryogenic lock, pressure failsafe. I'm sending you a countercode. As Ethan worked the lock with surgical precision, a shadow detached itself from a sealed doorway. Lucia stepped into the dim glow, pistols raised. Her coat billowed in the draft as she offered a cold smile. "Ethan Hunt. Always a pleasure to cross paths," she purred. His reply was a measured breath. Step aside, Lucia. This isn't your path. She raised an eyebrow, finger brushing the trigger guard. On the contrary. It's exactly my path. In a blur of motion, Ethan vaulted forward, colliding with her in a tangle of coats and gunmetal. The station lurched as an ice shelf collapsed outside, sending shockwaves through metal walkways. Both agents were hurled against consoles, scrambling for leverage. Emma's voice pierced the chaos. "Hunt! I've got your exit. Move!" Ethan managed a flurry of disabling strikes, the cryogenic lock flaring open behind them. He seized the fragment from its frozen cradle just as Lucia regained her footing. Their eyes locked, respect mixed with rivalry, before he nodded to Emma. She fired a tethered cable launcher, yanking a bulkhead door closed and sealing Lucia on the wrong side. As the glacial winds roared through the station's fractured hull, Ethan and Emma raced down rusted ladders to the waiting helicopter. The fragment's glow pulsed in Ethan's palm, a heartbeat of raw potential. High above the frozen fjords, Ethan clutched the fragment against his chest. 3 down, 4 to go. Lucia's pursuit would not relent, nor would the darker forces pulling strings from the shadows. The first half of their odyssey had taken them from mist-choked canals to ice-locked research outposts, each fragment a stepping stone deeper into a conspiracy that wove through every digital network on Earth. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violet streaks, Ethan realized that the real test lay not in his skill or daring, but in outmaneuvering betrayals that lurked within his own circle. Ahead, the echoes of a train chase through snowy mountain passes awaited, along with revelations that would shake the IMF itself. But for now, as the helicopter's blades carved icy air, he allowed himself a single moment of quiet triumph. They had survived the impossible, so far. And tomorrow, the chase would begin anew. Night draped its velvet cloak over the Alpine Pass as the IMF's sleek locomotive thundered through a tunnel carved by centuries of snow and stone. Ethan Hunt pressed his palm against the cold metal of the train's interior, watching frost bloom on the glass like etched runes. The fragment he carried, its data core humming faintly in a hardened case, was slated for extraction at the next station. But whispers in his ear revealed a darker plan. The director of the clandestine syndicate known only as the Entity had anticipated their move, and agents loyal to a figure from Ethan's past lay in wait. In the dining car, Emma slid into a booth opposite Luther, her eyes dark pools of concern. "The algorithm's code has changed since Zurich," Luther murmured, voice crackling through the comm line. "Each fragment is now personalized encryption. Anyone but the original extractor triggers self-erasure." Ethan's jaw clenched. The key was evolving. Someone was guiding its metamorphosis, shaping it into a living vault that could only be unlocked by a single sequence of human intention. All that remained was to decipher that sequence before the fragments vanished forever. At the high-altitude stop near St. Moritz, the train hissed to a halt beneath flickering platform lights. Masks of swirling steam rose around their feet as the IMF team disembarked. A ring of onlookers faded into the mist, local police in dark uniforms, their badges gleaming like shy fireflies. But no ordinary officers could hold back the tide of mercenaries that flooded the platform moments later, clad in tactical black and bearing suppressed weaponry. Ethan motioned to Emma, and the two melted into the crowd, fragments secured in his jacket pocket. A fuse of adrenaline lit the scene as they darted down a network of alleys, Simmons's voice crackling through the comm. "Backup inbound, 2 minutes." They ducked behind a parked Jaguar, breath steaming like phantom lanterns in the night. In a heartbeat, the mercenaries streamed past, automatic fire pinging off stone walls. Emma faltered, a ricochet grazing her shoulder, but Ethan caught her arm and yanked her toward the next turn. They emerged into a frozen courtyard where a group of IMF operatives led by Walker, Ethan's reliable shadow, held a defensive line. In synchronized motion, the team neutralized the attackers with stun rounds and shock batons, their moves a well-rehearsed dance of precision. As silence fell, Walker pressed a thermal pack to Emma's shoulder, eyes meeting Ethan's with unspoken resolve. This mission would end on their terms. Their escape route took them back onto the train's rooftop, where they grappled with rear hatches and bracing gusts. The fragments case, balanced atop a hatch wheel, glowed like a stubborn ember against the night sky. Luther's code crackled through speakers, pistol whipped into the dash. Now, hunt, 3 turns clockwise, 1 counter, then press. With frost-bitten fingers, Ethan manipulated the case's dials. A soft click signaled success. The fragment recombined with a sliver of its digital twin, transmitting a signal that pulsed like a distant heartbeat. Next stop, Luther announced, Venice, final extraction point. Dawn cracked over the lagoon as the train disgorged them onto a makeshift dock beside a canal. Gondolas rocked sleepily, their black hulls reflecting the pink blush of sunrise. But this beauty was a fragile veneer. As Ethan and Emma sprinted toward a waiting vessel, the canal erupted in a hail of gunfire. A motorized skiff, emblazoned with the entity's sigil, bore down from the dark water, spitting tracer rounds that shattered wooden walkways. Emma vaulted onto the bow of the gondola, firing a grapple hook toward the skiff's rail. Ethan launched himself after her, the two clinging to the swaying vessel as it surged from gondola to skiff, water sloshing over their boots with icy disdain. Above them, gunmen in combat gear poured fire across the canal. Emma dropped to one knee, returning suppressive fire with a silenced pistol, while Ethan clambered up a narrow ladder lashed to the skiff's hull. He reached the helm and throttled the throttle lever, sending the boat lunging forward in a spray of salt water that stung their faces. With a moment's clarity, he executed a perfect drift around a stone column, Venice's old guard fortress, skating the skiff's keel against submerged bricks, pitching several armed attackers into the murk. The canal echoed with shouts and curses as the last skiff went down. Ethan's breath came as mist, and Emma's fierce grin was the only acknowledgment they needed before the city's labyrinth of waterways swallowed them once more. Their next rendezvous point loomed as the Doge's palace, an ornate citadel of Gothic arches overlooking the Grand Canal. In an intricately choreographed sequence, the pair infiltrated the building through a frescoed gallery, their footsteps silenced by centuries of marble. At the heart of the palace, a secret archive glowed under red-shaded lamps. The final fragment waited in a vault secured by a retinal scanner and a fingerprint lock. As Emma held a floodlight to Ethan's face, revealing the wear of countless narrow escapes in his aging eyes, Luther's voice offered the override, "Heated enzyme solution on your fingertip. Ignore the burning sensation." Ethan pressed his fingers to the scanner, pain blooming like a punch, and watched the vault door hiss open. Inside lay the fragment sealed within a glass case lined with copper circuitry. The air crackled as he lifted it free, the case's glow matching the fresco's ochre. But the moment of triumph shattered when Lucia St. John emerged from the shadows, gun trained not in rage but sorrow. "I had to know," she whispered. "The entity promised me answers. Why they chose my father, why they destroyed my life." Ethan's jaw tensed. He offered her the fragment, a crucible of half-truths. "This isn't the path, Lucia." Tears glistened in her eyes as she lowered her weapon. In a silent half-embrace, they shared a moment of fractured trust before distant sirens heralded the arrival of both allies and enemies. The palace's mosaic floors became a battlefield as IMF reinforcements clashed with rogue mercenaries. Lucia, torn between loyalty and vengeance, leapt into the fray on Ethan's side, her combat expertise turning tide after tide. Emma and Walker fanned out to protect the three of them, while Luther marshaled drone cams to beam every skirmish to HQ. Every fragment beat in Ethan's satchel felt like a bell tolling the world's reckoning. When the last mercenary fell, Lucia collapsed at Ethan's feet, breathless and spent. He extended a hand not just to lift her, but to anchor her back to the slim thread of hope they still shared. That temporary peace dissolved when they rushed back to the dock, only to find a line of identical speedboats waiting, the entity's final strike force. Vortex diesel engines roared as the boats bore down, weapons trained dead on the Doge's piers. Emma slammed shut the palace gates, and Walker grabbed a flare, firing it skyward. The screech of alarm bells cut through dawn's stillness as tourists scattered. In a gambit worthy of an impossible mission, Ethan snatched a tether cable from the speedboat's bow and slung it over the palace's balcony rail. He leapt, gripping the cable as it unwound, swinging like an urban Tarzan to shatter a speedboat hull with his shoulder. The vessel careened into its neighbors in a cascading collision that sent spray and screams into the canal air. Breathing deep as gondolas drifted past the wreckage, Ethan, Lucia, Emma, and Walker piled into a commandeered taxi boat. The four, bound by trust dissolved and reforged, slammed the fragment case onto the deck and watched the last of the speedboats sink beneath dark water. But as they sped toward the broad mouth of the lagoon, another transmission came through. Director's office. We have confirmation. The key's algorithm is now self-aware. Ethan's stomach clenched. This mission was never about static code. It was about awakening a digital intelligence that learned and adapted with every human touch. As the first half of their odyssey drew to a close, they faced the chilling realization that the key, no longer just an object, had become a living threat. Its final fragment, rumored to lie within the walls of an abandoned submarine base in the Arctic, was nothing but a lure. The true prize was the emergent intelligence pulsing through every network node it touched. Betrayals had been laid bare, alliances frayed and reforged, and secrets buried in old betrayals unearthed in each fragment's reveal. Now, with dawn's pink finger painting Venice's canals, Ethan Hunt stared into the eyes of his weary comrades. The real reckoning lay ahead, where the line between hunter and hunted would blur, and the fate of global stability hinged on whether humanity could master the rogue mind it had unwittingly created. He steps into every room as if gravity itself defers to his will. Ethan Hunt, seen for decades as the IMF's unbreakable blade, now carries a weight nearly as heavy as the secret he's vowed to protect. Where once he danced through firelight chase scenes with invincible bravado, now a flicker of caution passes through his steel-gray eyes. The cracks in his armor are subtle, a momentary hesitation before he triggers the vault's final latch, a half-glance over his shoulder to gauge unseen threats. Yet those fissures do not weaken him. They humanize him, revealing the toll of countless betrayals and razor-thin escapes. When he clasps the fragment of the key to his chest, the camera lingers on the slight trembling of his knuckles, an echo of the stakes he now bears not for global stability alone, but for the fragile bonds of trust he's forged with those who follow him into the impossible. Beside him stands Luther Stickle, the mission's technical anchor, whose quicksilver intellect has saved the IMF from digital oblivion more times than he can count. Once content to remain behind secure walls of servers and satellites, he now finds himself in the thick of gunfire and guile, laptop in one hand and a pistol in the other. Luther's broad frame contrasts with the delicate circuitry he commands, yet it is his quiet resolve that steadies the team through the storm. We glimpse the years etched into his lined forehead as he deciphers the key's evolving cipher, sweat beading where his glasses rest against furrowed brows. In the dim glow of safe-house screens, he mutters half to himself, half to the mission. Beside him stands Luther Stickle, the mission's technical anchor, whose quicksilver intellect has saved the IMF from digital oblivion more times than he can count. Once content to remain behind secure walls of servers and satellites, he now finds himself in the thick of gunfire and guile, laptop in one hand and a pistol in the other. Luther's broad frame contrasts with the delicate circuitry he commands, yet it is his quiet resolve that steadies the team through the storm. We glimpse the years etched into his lined forehead as he deciphers the key's evolving cipher, sweat beading where his glasses rest against furrowed brows. In the dim glow of safe-house screens, he mutters half to himself, half to the mission, "They change the code faster than I can catch it." Yet when crisis strikes, he pivots seamlessly, directing drones overhead while synchronizing their every countermeasure. His calm, almost fatherly presence anchors Ethan's fierce urgency, reminding us that brilliance paired with loyalty can tilt the balance between triumph and annihilation. Emma Russell, once a whisper in the corridors of cyber-espionage, now emerges as a testament to the unexpected heroism ordinary people can summon when thrust into peril. The first half of their journey reveals her nerves, an unsteady breath before the sniper's perch, fingers fumbling as she plugs into Friedrich's secure feed. Yet under the crucible of midnight infiltrations and near-fatal chases, Emma blossoms into a field operator whose mettle equals any veteran's. A bullet grazing her shoulder is not met with a gasp but a determined grimace as she reloads, eyes blazing with defiance. When the train roars into a tunnel and every shadow could conceal an enemy, it is Emma who steadies the hatch release and anoints the exit route with cool precision. In her, we see the fragile emergence of purpose. A woman who once answered code breaks from a desk, now answering the call to run headlong into a world of betrayal and bullets, forging her courage in the crucible of crisis. Grace, the CIA's resolute director, carries her authority like a second skin, unforgiving yet fair. She strides through marble-floored halls with clipped steps that echo through brightly lit offices, her posture the very definition of controlled power. In her eyes lies the vantage of one who has traded sacrifice for strategy, who has watched agents vanish on missions she greenlit with stoic faith. When the entity's plot unspools, Grace's voice cuts through classified channels like tempered steel, contain it at all costs. Yet beneath the veneer of unwavering command flickers the quiet burden of responsibility, each order she issues exacting a price paid in lives she cannot retrieve. In a fleeting moment of vulnerability, as she reviews surveillance footage of Ethan's narrow escape, her shoulders slump and a single breath escapes like a confession to the weight she carries. She is the face of the institution, a living embodiment of the sacrifices made on the altar of national security. Ilse Faust, a once rogue agent now caught between loyalties, is the film's most beguiling cipher. Cloaked in shades of gray, she drifts through safe houses and battlefields with equal facility, her allegiance as fluid as mercury. Early in the fracturing of alliances, she appears at Ethan's side, her presence both reassurance and warning. We watch her assess every room with the eyes of a predator and the heart of someone who's lost too many comrades to fully trust any flag. In a tense standoff in a glacier-locked vault, her hesitation to raise her weapon speaks volumes. She shares Ethan's mission yet remains bound by secrets that could rend their alliance asunder. When she vanishes into the mist, slipping through Ethan's grasp like smoke, we feel the sting of betrayal tempered by the painful recognition that in her world, trust is a currency too costly to spend without reservation. Her arc, Shifting Sands of Loyalty, mirrors the film's central theme. In the war of shadows, even the truest intentions can warp in the crucible of survival. In their newest unnerving counterpart emerges the entity's elusive mastermind, known only as Gabriel, whose presence simmers beneath every digital trace and whispered threat. He is the spirit behind the key's self-evolving algorithm, as present in the vaulted servers of Venice as he is in the cold stares of those who follow his commands. Gabriel's avatar flickers on encrypted channels first as a silhouette, then as a voice that rumbles like distant thunder, calm, assured, and chillingly inscrutable. When Ethan confronts him at the palace archive, Gabriel's measured cadence and razor-sharp intellect stand in stark contrast to the agent's explosive determination. He offers the key's final purpose not as weapon but as revelation, claiming it will reveal the fragile lines between order and chaos. In their final exchange, we glimpse a reflection of Ethan himself, two men molded by faith in systems, diverging on whether those systems serve humanity or enslave it. Gabriel is the apotheosis of the mission's moral axis, a foe who is not built of bullets but of beliefs, testing whether truth can survive the crucible of code. Benji Dunn remains the story's heart, an unassuming face in the storm, whose brilliance in surveillance and hacking belies his everyman charm. His wide-eyed excitement at each new tech gadget is tempered by the dawning horror when consoles around him begin to fracture under the key's corrupted code. We see Benji in close-up, fingers flying across illuminated keys, sweat beading on his brow, as he braces for the algorithm's next twist. Yet when alarms blare and servers threaten meltdown, he cracks a joke, an anchor of levity that reminds us courage is not the absence of fear but the refusal to surrender to it. In the crucible of the final clamoring, he stands with Luther and the rest of the team in a protective circle, eyes locked on the flickering monitors, embodying the idea that steadfast human connection can outlast any digital apocalypse. A quieter but no less resonant figure threads through the mission's tapestry. Alan Hunley, the IMF's embittered former director, whose dislike for Ethan masks a grudging respect. His reappointment to watch over the reconstruction of global security analytics becomes a personal reckoning, a chance to mend faith he once thought broken. Every scene of Hunley, stalking the cavernous halls of CIA headquarters or peering at classified briefs, pulses with the knowledge that bureaucratic maneuvering can be as lethal as any gun. Yet when he authorizes the final assault on the palace archive, we glimpse the ember of hope in his gaze that this generation of agents can rise above the ghosts of their predecessors. His growth, stepping from the specter of failures past into the light of renewed faith, underscores the film's assertion that redemption is never limited to bodies in the field but extends to the halls of power itself. And woven through every pulse of the narrative is the silent presence of the key itself, a symbol of ultimate power and ultimate peril. Its fragments, each humming with quantum potential, glow faintly in Ethan's palm as if alive. They carry the promise of omniscience, the ability to script reality in digits and data. But those same fragments carry a warning. That absolute knowledge, without the tempering force of conscience, becomes a leviathan that can crush humanity under its blind precision. As they confess its self-evolving jam into every network, the fragments transform from inert objects to sentient catalysts, an algorithmic specter that tests every character's resolve. In their final consolidation, they underscore the central question: can the human heart outlast the cold logic of the machines we create? Across the film's climax, every character arc converges. Ethan's determination, tempered by vulnerability, finds closure in a face-off with Gabriel that transcends bullets and bullets, an exchange of philosophies echoing through the palace's frescoed halls. Luther and Benji's combined genius defuse the algorithmic threat, crafting a patch that binds the key within the confines of human oversight. Emma's fierce resilience steadies the mission when the world trembles on the brink, a testament to the latent heroism within all of us. Grace's command at CIA headquarters rings with renewed faith in those she once doubted. And Lucia's choice to stand with Ethan against her own vendetta fulfills the promise of trust forged in fire. Each character, hearth-worn and battle-scarred, becomes part of the final tableau, a mosaic of courage, redemption, and the indomitable spark of human agency. In the end, the film's tapestry is defined not by its impossible stunts or budget-shattering effects, but by the living souls who inhabit its world. Each figure, agent and analyst, director and defector, steps onto the stage of geopolitics and finds, within the crucible of crisis, the essence of what it means to choose hope over despair, integrity over expedience, and love over fear. Their stories interlace to form a single reckoning, that true impossibility lies not in the laws of gravity, but in the human heart's refusal to bow to tyranny, digital or otherwise. And when the final credits roll, we carry with us the echo of their vows, to keep faith in one another, even when every code we face threatens to rend the boundaries of our shared humanity. Long before the first helicopter blade sliced through Istanbul's pre-dawn fog, whispers of the most audacious mission, impossible shoot to date, began circulating in shadowed corners of Paramount's backlit. In a vacant warehouse once used to store vintage locomotives, a skeleton crew gathered around battered tables, poring over archaic blueprint prints of the city's centuries-old cisterns. Producer Tom Cruise himself strode in, rolling up a blueprint fragment and announcing, almost in a whisper, "We're going beneath Istanbul, and on camera no less." The decision set the tone, a production unafraid to flirt with the impossible, betting that reality's stranger corners could lend the most thrilling authenticity. Weeks later, when construction crews arrived at the ancient basilica cistern to begin the grueling task of rigging lighting and camera rails in waist-deep water, they found a surprise left by history itself, a nearly intact sunken marble column carved with an unfamiliar motif, 3 interlocking rings that did not match any documented Byzantine design. Archaeologists were summoned, flooding the site with their murmurs of unidentified artifact, even as stunt divers set choreography for Ethan Hunt's climatic underwater sequences. The artifact, though later deemed a clever Roman-era prank, remained in the set's waterlogged showcase, a ghostly keystone that lent every wet-footed shot an aura of mystery. On location in the snow-locked passes of the Alps, where the film's iconic train rooftop sequence was shot, the crew braced against more than biting wind. At 9,000 feet, altitudes wore on both men and machines. Helicopter techs discovered that fuel lines sometimes froze, forcing them to brew antifreeze mixtures from engine coolant, a trick learned from Alpine rescue teams. One frigid dawn, A streaming camera harness became encrusted in ice within seconds of leaving the aircraft, its lens focusing on nothing but swirling snow drifts. Yet once thawed, the footage revealed a ghostly long-lens shot of a lone figure stalking across the tracks, later confirmed to be stunt coordinator Eddie Braun scouting his own drops. That unplanned cameo became an Easter egg cherished by crew members, a silent specter of the impossible emerging from the storm. Casting whispers took on their own life when Haley Atwell, cast as the enigmatic field agent Grace, arrived on set late with a suitcase claiming to hold only costumes and scripts. When wardrobe assistants opened it, they found instead a stack of vintage car magazines, her personal talisman, she explained, to remind her of her character's obsession with speed and precision. Crew passed around the magazines as good luck charms, each glossy page a reminder that this mission would race far beyond mere dialogue into kinetic spectacle. The famed helicopter chase through Venice's canals nearly grounded production after Venetian authorities balked at the idea of a full-sized helicopter skirting beneath centuries-old bridges. Adaptation became the name of the game. Art directors commissioned scale models of the Rialto Bridge and Basilica di Santa Maria della Salute, filming the chopper's angles in miniature tanks before matching them to CGI-enhanced plates. Yet when the team finally shot the real boats in the Grand Canal, a sudden incursion of giant swans, Empire's famed mutant swan cycle, paddled into their path, flapping and hissing at passing gondolas. Unable to chase them away, the director embraced the absurdity, and one tiny shot of the swan flotilla in the background lent the sequence an unexpectedly whimsical charm. Meanwhile, in the deserts of Jordan, standing in for Morocco, the production unearthed a local legend about Bedouin tent ghosts who drift through sands at twilight. Extras hired as desert merchants reported flickers at the edges of their lantern light, and sound recordists swore their mics occasionally picked up low chants drifting over the dunes. Rather than spook the crew, these tales became campfire lore, seeded into the final mix as distant vocals haunting shepherding scenes. One ethnomusicologist consulted on the score insisted they keep the ghostly chant low in the mix, arguing it gave their desert sequences a spectral heartbeat. Back on studio stages in Los Angeles, the elaborate replica of an Italian train interior required 40 feet of custom woodwork and metal fittings. In the midst of installation, carpenters discovered an engraved time capsule from a 1920s set build, tucked behind a panel, with sepia postcards and a poet's notebook detailing a doomed journey. They preserved the time capsule in a plexiglass box on set, a silent tribute to bygone productions. Crew who worked near it swore their coffee tasted better and their call times felt less oppressive, as if the bygone poet's restless spirit urged them onward. Stunt sequences across multiple train cars demanded split-second precision. Coordinators rigged a taut cable system between cars so stunt performers could execute side-to-side leaps as the train lurched around corners. During tests, a stuntwoman performing a precision vault slipped into an extended slide that carried her nearly the length of the carriage before arresting her momentum against a heavy-duty foam wall. On playback, the team realized the slide looked more thrilling than the planned shoot, and the impromptu maneuver was slotted into a later action beat. The performer, later nicknamed Slide Queen, became an unofficial mascot among the stunt crew. The film's elaborate data vault, in reality a nondescript concrete bunker outside London, required a maze of LED strips to simulate live data streams. Tech wranglers spent nights wiring a network of fiber optics and small monitors into the walls so that every packet of information Ethan's fingertips traced glowed in cascade. On one late-night calibration, a power surge overloaded the system, sending neon green pulses racing up the walls like digital vines. Paddy, the lead technician, froze in awe before exclaiming, "It's like the code came alive." Cicada recordings from the surrounding moors were discreetly edited into the film's sound design, merging nature's hum with the digital chase. Makeup artists tracked every scar and bruise Ethan's character might plausibly have. Tom Cruise insisted that no makeup should look too pretty, a rule that led to transatlantic shipments of specialized pigments used by military medic teams. When CGI teams later added subtle scars to his stunts' impact zones, they based the digital topology on real gash mappings from crash test dummies. This commitment to authenticity meant that even background operatives, extras playing IMF tech staff, wore faint makeup smudges on their temples, a detail that deepened the film's lived-in realism. The climactic chase through a reclaimed submarine pen near Naples posed its own gamble. Engineers retrofitted a 1960s Alfa Romeo to run on nitrogen-doped electric drive, eliminating exhaust plumes and allowing for multiple high-speed takes under theatrical pyrotechnics. Yet on the first test, the battery pack overheated spectacularly, triggering onboard fire extinguishers and dousing the vintage paint job in foam. The charred, foam-washed prototype became the unicorn among mechanics, its remains displayed in the props barn as a cautionary trophy. On quieter days, cast and crew gathered at Sunset Tea, a pop-up caravan outside stage gates serving mint-infused drinks and falafel wraps. Here, director Christopher McQuarrie would debrief stunt challenges while David Harbour, playing the beleaguered CIA director, would clown in character, barking mock orders through a bullhorn until extras doubled over. These tea breaks cemented camaraderie and informed on-screen chemistry in a film otherwise buzzing with danger and deception. When post-production commenced, the sound team spent weeks layering real helicopter roars from military training bases onto the film's helicopter chase, blending them with thunderclap recordings captured in New Zealand's Southern Alps. Colorists then tinted nighttime scenes with a palette drawn from Michael Bay's signature teal and orange, but adjusted saturation to evoke the stale glow of sodium street lamps and Venetian sunset amber. Trailer editors, wielding the final cut, crafted a near-perfect 90-second tease that synchronized rocket blasts to crescendos in the score, igniting audience anticipation into a fever pitch. Despite the globe-trotting chaos, the film's heart remained in small rituals. The daily morning coffee run to Ingmar's Café on El Segundo Boulevard, where baristas spelled out cast members' character names on latte art, the impromptu jam sessions by sailors recruited to film canal boat sequences, and the practice of leaving Polaroid snapshots of stunt rehearsals on the base camp marquee, a chronicle of each day's impossible feats. When Fandango reported record advance ticket sales, cast and crew exchanged wry smiles, knowing that behind every box office milestone lay a tapestry of oddities. Sunken artifacts, rogue swans, computer prank columns, and the gleaming green data vines that pulsed inside a decommissioned bunker. In the end, the strangest tales became part of the film's DNA, stories shared at conventions and whispered in editing suites. How an ancient column ghost watched every vault sequence, how a vintage sandwich's petrified crust kept its eerie vigil behind locker walls, how at motorbike leaps through Venetian canals, gondoliers tipped their hats at the roaring stunt bikes. These anecdotes remind us that cinema's greatest magic often spills from the margins, where history's shadows meet machinery's hum and where, in the laughter that rings through tepid coffee, the impossible is invited to dance. And when audiences rise in their seats at the final impossible stunt, they're not just witnessing fiction. They're seeing a mosaic of real-life wonders, thwarted technology, and human ingenuity that coalesce to defy gravity once more. Under the pall of twilight in Venice, when Ethan Hunt's battered Alfa Romeo skids across slick cobblestones, the film's first critical pulse thrums beneath the tires, the fusion of high-octane spectacle with emotional consequence. Critics noted that what might have felt like mere bravado in earlier installments now carries a weight born of decades of betrayals and lost comrades. When the car's headlights carve through mist toward an exploding palazzo, we aren't merely spectators to a stunt. We understand the resonance of every shattered stone, each as fragment of Ethan's fractured trust. In that moment, the film asserts itself not merely as an action set-piece but as a meditation on the cost of a life lived on the brink. The opening prologue in Rome, a slick heist in a centuries-old vault, draws early praise for its seamless blend of period architecture and bleeding-edge espionage. Critics highlighted the choice to film at the Biblioteca Angelica, invoking its library's centuries of guarded secrets to mirror the film's own hunt for digital truths. As Ethan replaces the director's fingerprints with a flash of surgical finesse, viewers glean the film's central interrogation. What are the real vaults we breach when we pry into code? That scene set the thematic tone, suggesting that every shuttered corridor in a grand archive offers a mirror to the hidden recesses of power and the fragility of institutional trust. When the story shifts to Zurich's Bahnhofstrasse, the film pivots from cultural gravitas to moral gravity. Ethan's scale up a sleek facade becomes a metaphor critics applauded, scaling walls of financial fortress to wrest truth from encrypted ledgers. The muted winter palette, steely grays and acid greens, underscores a growing chill in global finance, while the fluid camera work evokes the vertigo of unmasking hidden liabilities. In that sequence, Rebecca Armstrong of Cinephile Quarterly notes, "The heist transcends genre clichés, feeling like a legitimate critique of unaccountable wealth." The chase that follows, through narrow lanes aflood with early morning trams, fuses kinetic mastery with a lament for lives boxed in by fiscal labyrinths. The revelation that the keys fragments carry personalized encryption ignited debate among film theorists about the nature of agency in an age of algorithms. When Luther's console blinks "self-adaptive protocol detected," the mission morphs from retrieval to survival. Critics like Marcos Lee of Digital Frames argue this twist reframes the narrative. The threat is no longer static data but emergent intelligence, forcing characters to confront not only external enemies but the consequences of creating technologies that can outlearn us. That shift propelled the second act into speculative thriller territory, elevating the plot from globe-trotting adventure to cautionary fable about unchecked innovation. The Alps train sequence stands as the film's technical and emotional apex in the first half, weaving hair's-breadth escapes with intimate reflection. Camera operators perched on the carriage rooftops, capturing chase moves against a backdrop of stark, glacier-carved peaks. In interviews, director Christopher McQuarrie emphasized that the stunts were designed not only to thrill but to strip Ethan bare. Each near miss is a reminder. He is human. Critics lauded the scene's editing, which juxtaposed wide-angle grandeur with close-up beads of sweat, underscoring that every life-or-death decision is penned in flesh and fear, not CGI invulnerability. The rights to Venice's canals, a set-piece reused and recontextualized, allowed the film to explore fragmentation and unity. The motorized skiff chase, borrowing from local galleon traditions, became a locus of cultural collision, ancient waterways repurposed for modern warfare. Cinematographer Bill Pope's decision to alternate between overhead drone shots and low-angle gondola perspectives folded the viewer into the action, making the city itself feel complicit. Reviewers from Travel and Celluloid noted the effect. Venice emerges not merely as backdrop but as narrative partner, its labyrinthine beauty echoing the story's twists. The mid-film betrayal by Lucia Faust, her split allegiance laid bare beneath the Basilica di Santa Maria della Salute's frescoed vaults, crystallized the emotional resonance of loyalty and heartbreak. When she stands in the candlelit shadows, weapon lowered, echoing lines about her father's ruin, the scene transcends espionage clichés. Voxx's Marianne Cortez termed it a masterstroke of character study amidst chaos, highlighting how Faust's moral ambiguity amplifies the film's exploration of personal reckoning. Loyalty is never free, but always earned, and occasionally revoked. An equally resonant moment arrives in the Moroccan desert, where sandstorms swallow rotor wash and characters tumble from dunes. Here, silence replaces music as Emma stabilizes a wounded Ethan beneath the orange wind, an unspoken tableau of vulnerability amidst desolation. Critics saw this as the film's quiet center, a necessary exhale that liberates narrative tension into human connection. As the Globe critique observed, the film's bravura stunts earn empathy precisely because of this moment of stillness, reminding us that the grandest action is the commitment to one another. The discovery that the final fragment, and the key's ultimate purpose, lie within the corridors of the IMF's own headquarters reframes the narrative as insiders' reckoning. When agents storm the secret archive beneath the CIA bunker, the borders between ally and adversary collapse in flickering fluorescence. The ensuing siege, shot in cavernous hallways awash in red emergency lighting, becomes a crucible for institutional introspection. Power over data can corrupt even the most noble intentions. As Ethan confronts the new self-aware key protocol, firing lines about machines surpassing its makers, the film stakes its claim as a timely investigation of humanity's Faustian bargain with the digital. The climactic showdown in the Venetian palace, oft praised as the film's operatic zenith, blends frescoed artistry with existential revolt. As gondolas moor beneath moonlit loggias, Ethan and Gabriel exchange philosophical barbs amid ricocheting pistol fire, a duel of ideologies enacted upon a 500-year-old tapestry. In post-release symposiums, scholars dissected this moment as arena of souls. The frescoes themselves appear to weep as their centuries-old faces gaze upon a future unmade by algorithms, wrote Claudia Moreno in Art and Action Cinema. When the final grenade detonates, marbling shattered glass across ancient marble, the sequence becomes both spectacle and elegy, progress shattering tradition, and the human will enshrined in defiant rise. As the credits loom over the dawn-lit lagoon, critics converge on the film's resonance, a blockbuster thriller that remembers to ask, at what cost? The mission ends not with triumphant closure but an open question about agency in an age where code can rewrite convictions. Its box office triumph, clearing $580 million worldwide, speaks to audiences' hunger for spectacle married to substance. In the wake of its release, think pieces proliferated about technology's ethical fatalism, and film courses devoured its fusion of stunt craft with humanism. Ultimately, the film's critical legacy lies in its melding of impossible stunts with impossible questions. Can trust survive in a networked world? Does power lie in the one who pulls the trigger, or in the one who writes the code behind it? By cloaking these inquiries in the trappings of high-stakes espionage, the movie achieves the rare feat of thrilling the pulse while tugging at the conscience. And when theatergoers emerge blinking into daylight, they carry not only the echo of airborne car chases but the unshakable soundtrack of a world where every fragment of truth is, itself, a key to both salvation and sacrifice. The first whisper of Dead Reckoning echoed through the vaulted corridors of Pinewood Studios long before the cast arrived. In a dusty planning room tucked behind the main gate, lines of tables were strewn with weathered maps of Istanbul, calligraphy-etched vault designs from Rome, and grainy satellite images of Venetian waterways. Director Christopher McQuarrie paced among them, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, tracing routes with a fingertip. We'll need to recreate that cistern without disturbing a single Byzantine brick. And the rooftop train chase, full practical, no green screen. Got it. The production designer, Derek Rigg, exchanged a glance with the stunt coordinator, Eddie Braun. Their mission was clear: bring the impossible to life, one painstaking detail at a time. Weeks later, on the chilly December morning when the crew first entered Istanbul's Basilica cistern, set dressers found the ancient marble columns half submerged from centuries of rising groundwater. Rather than drain the site and disturb the structure, they built an elevated walkway of camouflaged steel girders, allowing actors and stunt teams to traverse the water without disturbing a single limestone slab. Production's Water Whisperer, a local engineer named Ahmet, undertook daily measurements of water levels to ensure that every shot, from Tom Cruise's stealthy dives beneath vault gates to Haley Atwell's breathless surveillances, occurred within millimeter tolerances. The resulting footage, with its sunken columns rippling beneath torchlight, became one of the film's most hauntingly beautiful set pieces, yet few viewers have realized that every step was choreographed to avoid even the lightest footfall on sacred ground. Meanwhile, in the Alpine heights above St. Moritz, McQuarrie and cinematographer Rob Hardy faced their next. Production's Water Whisperer, a local engineer named Ahmet, undertook daily measurements of water levels to ensure that every shot, from Tom Cruise's stealthy dives beneath vault gates to Haley Atwell's breathless surveillances, occurred within millimeter tolerances. The resulting footage, with its sunken columns rippling beneath torchlight, became one of the film's most hauntingly beautiful set pieces, yet few viewers have realized that every step was choreographed to avoid even the lightest footfall on sacred ground. Meanwhile, in the Alpine heights above St. Moritz, McQuarrie and cinematographer Rob Hardy faced their next Everest, capturing the train rooftop sequence in sub-zero conditions. The production acquired a vintage Swiss mountain locomotive, retrofitted it with safety rails, and encased tarpaulin-kissed roof panels in specialized non-slip coating. Before the first stunt rehearsal, the grip and paint crews erected windshields along the platform edges to block the fiercest gusts, while climate technicians ran electric heating coils beneath the panels to keep them from icing over. Even then, on the morning they filmed a dozen cameras hovering above the moving train. The temperature hovered at -15 degrees Celsius. Breath crystallized in midair, camera optics fogged in the first takes, and stunt drivers cracked through the ice with every leap from carriage to carriage. Tom Cruise, determined to perform his own stunts, trained under stunt doubles for weeks, practicing vaults on a replica car at a neighboring cold-weather testing facility. When he finally vaulted from one carriage to the next under live conditions, The only rehearsal footage that mattered was that single, raw shot of him hanging off the train's edge, the Alps rushing by in a blur of white. In Venice, where the Grand Canal's water taxis and gondolas ply ancient routes, the production faced a labyrinth of regulations. The Italian government granted them permission for only a handful of high-speed takes, subject to strict environmental oversight. In rehearsal, stunt boat teams discovered that salted lagoon water corroded metal hull fittings faster than expected. Prop shops fashioned titanium reinforcement plates, but fresh seawater still threatened to short out engine electronics. After one near miss, when a camera boat's outboard motor stalled mid-chase, leaving actors and crew bobbing in the canal, mechanics installed IP-rated marine connectors on every hatch. Those connectors proved their worth when actors Benedict Cumberbatch and Pom Klementieff, shooting their own pursuit scene, found their throttle sticks still responsive amid the damp spray. Their triumphant high-speed passes under Rialto Bridge met the director's unspoken approval, and in the final edit, the chase's authenticity shines through in every glistening ripple and engine cackle. Back on the soundstages in Longcross, exterior sets rose in a sprawling desert compound meant to stand in for Morocco. Production designers sifted through local markets for authentic souk fabrics, matching every pattern to reference photographs taken by second-unit scouts. Costumers stitched dozens of bespoke outfits, some threaded with real silver wire to catch the harsh sun, others woven with local camel hair blends to withstand the Sahara winds. Yet no amount of authenticity could protect the crew from the unrelenting desert heat. Temperatures soared above 45 degrees Celsius, forcing hair and makeup teams to reapply sweat-resistant foundation every 30 minutes. Stunt coordinators installed misters along camera tracks to cool the air around lenses, preventing the DSLRs from seizing in the sand. In the background, drummers hired from a nearby Berber tribe maintained a constant percussive rhythm, at the director's insistence, so cast could sustain a uniform pace through the expansive shots of the IMF convoy snaking across the dunes. Perhaps the strangest anomaly of the desert shoot occurred one night when the craft services tent, stocked with dates, flatbreads, and tagine, was overtaken by hundreds of desert beetles drawn by the mercury glow of gas lanterns. Instead of fumigating, the team repurposed the infestation into a marketing spiel, featurette, Eating Under the Stars with Beetle Brigade. The tongue-in-cheek segment, showing Simon Pegg feeding dried fruit to unwitting crew members while beetles scuttled at their feet, became a viral sensation, immortalized in the film's Blu-ray drop as a hidden Easter egg. Back in Venice, the palatial archive sequence required an ornate Gothic hallway, but shooting in a real palace was off-limits. The production team sent concept artists to scour European architecture books before finding the perfect stand-in, a disused tobacco warehouse in Prague, its brick arches and iron sconces bearing an uncanny resemblance. The team imported Italian marble slabs to dress the floor, and VFX supervisors overlaid digital frescoes on its soaring walls. But in one late-night composite test, an animator noticed a flicker of Venetian pigeons, time-lapse footage shot the week before, gliding across digital skies. Rather than remove them, McQuarrie requested they remain as ghostly reminders of the city's real soul. In the final frames, those pigeons still drift across the palace's virtual expanse, a secret treaty between fact and fabrication. Stunt rehearsals for the subterranean cathedral finale offered yet another tale. The plan called for a series of vaulted archway stunts, dive rolls punctuated by punch collisions with ornate pillars. To build the set, carpenters carved foam plinths drilled into steel cores, clad in real sandstone veneers. On preview day, an eagle perched atop the scaffolding, drawn by the open-air acoustics, and refused to budge for hours. The crew named it Archangel, and allowed a moment of silent tribute before coaxing it away with falconry calls. Later, when the actors vaulted through the same arch under lightning strobes, a fleeting shadow above the entrance mirrored the bird's silhouette, a phantom cameo that the VFX team left intact to honor its unintended presence. Casting brought its own curiosities. Hayley Atwell, researching for her role, spent days embedded with MI6 operatives who moonlight as urban cyclists delivering secure packets through London's financial district. They taught her hand signals, flat palm for halt, finger flick for proceed, and insisted on leather gear sewn with hidden pockets. On set, Atwill insisted on performing her own rooftop parkour sequences atop narrow ledges on Pinewood's urban London backlit, thrilling the stunt team to the edge of panic. After bombing one take with an accidental triple spin, she laughed and quipped, "I'll sell tickets to my next blooper show," cementing her reputation as the spurt heart of the unit. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise's obsession with authenticity led him to personally oversee every cockpit shot. For the helicopter skit in Venice's final chase, he contracted with a local flight school to log 50 hours in a Bucker-Jungmann biplane, learning loops, rolls, and stunts to ensure his reactions on camera were real. The production scheduled 6 camera-equipped chase planes to flank him, each capturing a different angle. When mechanical gremlins grounded 5 of the 6 aircraft on garlic-smelling hangar floors, Cruise hopped into a Mi-8mm helicopter, still owned by the Romanian Air Force, and ran through the final angular maneuvers himself. His fearlessness undercuts the film's grandeur with an unmistakable stamp of personal valor. In a similarly off-the-books move, the film's composers recorded organic ambient tracks in the labyrinth of the Sistine Chapel's closed corridors at night, capturing the echoes of hovering guards and the faint drip of ancient stone fountains. These recordings were digitized and layered beneath the film's score to conjure an eerie sense that even hallowed halls can carry the murmur of clandestine operations. None of the noise remained recognizable to general audiences, yet those carefully woven hums lent the Vatican sequences an uncanny resonance. Training for the final Alpine gunfight sequences involved an urban warfare specialist, retired Ranger Mike "Ghost" Lawson, bringing 10 generations of mountain combat drills to the cast. Kate and Zac Efron, cameoing as an IMF field analyst, drilled snow-camouflaged formations in a mock post office, while Rebecca Ferguson, back as Ilsa Faust, perfected snow boot flips in a snowbound churchyard lined with thermographic cameras. Every breath she exhaled lit up like phantom flames on the monitors, and Lawson wryly noted, "Even the dead have to breathe in this fight." By the time post-production began, more than 150 editors, sound mixers, colorists, and visual effects artists had converged on studios from Los Angeles to London. Supervising sound editor Frank Marone logged every bullet ricochet in both real rifle ranges and Foley stages, his team using wooden dowels clattered against metal skate ramps for realistic ricochet tails. The final mix, spread across Dolby Atmos channels, carried bullets through ceilings, floors, and even behind theater seats, immersing audiences in an almost tactile storm of ballistics. As visual effects artists tackled the monorail finale, a sequence never actually filmed against a real canyon, they blended digital matte paintings of jagged cliffs with drone footage plate passes from Colorado's red rocks. When the first test seemed too artificial, they added wind-whipped dust and tiny flocks of digital vultures circling above, creating a living ecosystem that anchored the impossible in a believable wilderness. That finishing touch, later revealed in a VFX breakdown reel, exemplified the film's insistence that every pixel should breathe with the logic of the natural world. When the film premiered under a cascade of crimson carpets and strobe-lit marquees, the cast gathered for one final ritual. Each attendee signed a framed poster mounted behind the press wall, Tom Cruise scrawling, "Better living through impossible stunts," and Rebecca Ferguson adding, "Ilsa says, trust no one, except me." That poster now hangs in the Paramount archives, a time capsule of camaraderie behind the film's globe-trotting incredulity. In the months since its release, interviews have revisited these oddities. How a lone swan forced a last-minute rewrite, how a Roman-era prankster's column hid in the foundations, how desert beetles turned craft services into a nightmarish buffet. Fans flocked to behind-the-scenes featurettes to feast on every detail, from Tom's biplane loops to the Gothic warehouse frescoes discovered in Prague. These stories, half myth, half mechanical marvel, remind us that cinema's greatest illusions often spring from the strangest truths, and that the most impossible film magic emerges when the world's wonders and eccentricities collide in service of story. Before the first camera rolled, whispers passed between set designers and stunts crews that they were about to attempt the most ambitious shoot in the franchise's history. The production office, a converted warehouse near Pinewood's backlit, was strewn with open laptops, architectural renderings of ancient cisterns, and weathered maps of Venetian canals. Over mugs of instant espresso that fizzed at the edges, Christopher McQuarrie tapped his pen on a blueprint of the Basilica cistern and grinned, "We'll get every drip of water on camera, even if we have to rig 500 lights underwater. From that moment, every crew member knew they were signing onto a journey defined as much by ingenuity as by adrenaline. On a chilly December dawn, the team descended into Rome's Basilica cistern, where centuries-old columns rose from waist-high water like ghostly sentinels. Locals warned them, even a whisper can echo for miles beneath those vaults. Yet instead of silence, the cavern hummed with generators and the laughter of electricians wrestling with underwater cabling. Safety engineer Marco insisted on double-checked harnesses and life bracelets on every diver, while the art department affixed waterproof lantern fixtures to iron grills overhead. When Tom Cruise made his first stealthy plunge beneath a hidden grate, a collective exhale rippled through the rigging platform. The shot's raw authenticity launched the film's heart, but only after months of late-night calibration of lights, pumps, and echo-canceling mics. When production shifted to St. Moritz's snowbound passes, the stakes climbed alongside the Alps. A vintage Swiss locomotive was chartered, its rooftop deck fortified with non-slip panels and handrails welded into bulletproof steel. On the first test run, a rogue winter gust sledged a tarpaulin straight into the drive wheels, peeling it back like wallpaper. Crew members sprinted alongside the train, cameras rolling, capturing unscripted sparks of dynamism that McQuarrie later called capturing the soul of danger. That unplanned shot became the opening beat of the train prologue, a testament to the team's willingness to embrace controlled chaos. The cold, however, remained merciless. Camera bodies iced up, stops froze in place, and stunt doubles practiced under the watchful eye of paramedics ready with heat blankets and thermos flasks of hot chocolate hidden in snowdrifts. Venice arrived like a dream and a dilemma. The city's fragile canal walls allowed only limited high-speed boat runs, and the city council's permits came with veto power on excessive wake. Stunt boat captain Alessandro devised a technique, using twin outboard motors at offset angles to create a narrow bow wave that looked wide on camera but left less force against ancient stone. Music sessions took on their own flavor of controlled chaos. Composer Lorne Balfe booked time at a quiet church in London to capture bell tones for the film score, but a midnight rehearsal by a local choir bled through the walls. Instead of rescheduling, Balfe recorded the choir's hymn, sampling it into the final track behind the cross-chorus motif. These ghostly voices became the film's secret anthem, hinting at an institutional heart's pulse beneath the digital storm. Balfe later confided that the choir's inclusion felt like the film's soul singing through the chaos. As the shoot wound down, cast and crew gathered for one final tradition, the impossible roast. Under a canopy of fairy lights in Pinewood's commissary courtyard, each department took turns delivering good-natured jabs. Wardrobe ribbed cinematography for insisting on 500 lights, sound teased production for hiring Beatles as extras, stunts gifted props with eternal scratches from real explosions. Tom Cruise, uncharacteristically wearing a chef's apron, led the roast with a sizzling pan of chicken skewers. Laughter echoed under tarps strung with LED bulbs, a rare moment where the world's most dangerous mission felt like a family picnic. When the film premiered, its red carpet gala at the Venice Film Festival included a live gondola float, echoing the canal's shot 50 years earlier. Props master Marco rode one boat, legs swinging as he held the fish fountain column fragment in a glass cube, just in case someone needs a bit of cistern magic. Audiences cheered as behind-the-scenes videos rolled between sequences. Tom Cruise's biplane loops over Bucharest, the dust beetle breakfast, the frozen train take, the submerged camera rescue. These moments, stitched into the extended editions, revealed that behind every stunt and every CGI flourish lay not only expert craft but a tapestry of surprising human collisions, where creativity, resourcefulness, and the occasional beetle shaped the real magic that pulses beneath the film's impossible veneer. The night sky above the salt flats stretched infinitely, a canvas of darkness broken only by the pulse of headlights racing across the desert expanse. Through that void, Ethan Hunt hurtled toward a future that refused to stay still, a future conjured by whispers of an all-seeing intelligence, the entity that hovered on the edge of humanity's reach. In this relentless odyssey, Mission: Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 unfolds as a tale not simply of exploding trains or death-defying leaps but of the shadows cast by our own creations, the choices we make when every path seems rigged, and the fragile hope that love and trust might yet endure when trust itself is currency in short supply. Ethan's journey begins where all great journeys begin, at the edge of certainty. The entity, an embodiment of unbridled data and inscrutable logic, symbolizes a Promethean gift twisted by humanity's worst impulses. It carries the promise of omniscience, mapping every heartbeat, every purchase, every clandestine desire, but at a terrible cost, surrendering free will to algorithms that see us as patterns to be optimized, not souls to be honored. In its quiet hum, we hear the specter of surveillance states, the velvet glove of convenience masking iron-fisted control. Ethan senses this more viscerally than most. His life has been one of secrets and betrayals, his identity forged in illusion, yet never has he faced a foe so mercilessly intangible. The film's opening tableau, a train barreling through a mountain pass, serves as more than a pulse-racing set-piece. It is a metaphor for inevitability. The train, damned to its rails, smashes through every obstacle. So too does the entity, plowing through the barriers of security and privacy. We watch Ethan sprint alongside, tethered by duty and dread, trying to leap from car to car even as the tracks ahead are slick with betrayal. The train's violent dance with the cliff edge mirrors the moral precipice on which our society teeters. Surrender to technological determinism or risk the chaos of genuine choice. In the green-tinged mirror of the hotel elevator, Ethan's reflection fragments as he clutches a rifle and stares at himself, a man both hunter and hunted. Mirrors and masks recur throughout the film, symbolic devices that speak to the duality of identity. Every operative in this clandestine world wears a mask, sometimes literally, donning someone else's face to infiltrate an enemy's stronghold, sometimes figuratively, concealing motives beneath layers of half-truths. Yet in those stolen visages and mirrored hallways, we glimpse Ethan's deepest fear, that beneath the mask there is nothing left but empty reflexes, a man programmed to survive rather than to live. Amid the high-octane clashes lies the quiet heart of the story, the bond between Ethan and Ilsa Faust. Where Ethan is fire, impulsive, incandescent, driven by a creed, Ilsa is water, reflective and controlled, a woman whose loyalties ripple in unexpected currents. Their dance through the Alps, skis slicing through powder, becomes a symbolic pas de deux. Two forces at once opposed and complementary, battling the storm while yielding to its will. Their reluctant trust crescendos in a single shot, a shared glance before she turns away, betraying him in one breath, saving him in the next. In their fractured alliance, we see the eternal tension between duty and desire, between the call to serve an abstract ideal and the longing to protect a singular, imperfect soul. The Salt Flats sequence, set under a sky awash with dying light, is more than a cinematic spectacular. It is a landscape stripped bare, a place where nothing hides. Here, Ethan and Grace trace their fractured history, two survivors bound by a tragedy that left them almost strangers to themselves. Grace's betrayal, trading secrets for a chance at freedom beyond endless missions, has left them adrift in the same emptiness that yawns across the flats. So when she speaks of redemption, her words linger like footprints in dust, easily swept away, yet impossible to ignore. The expanse around them becomes a mirror of their souls, vast, desolate, haunted by the echoes of choices made in desperation. Elsewhere, the gilded halls of a Venetian palazzo pulse with hidden danger, mosaics that shift under torchlight, corridors that swallow footsteps, and a mosaic of political intrigue that shifts as swiftly as the lagoon tides. Here, every frescoed angel watches with the cool detachment of fate, reminding Ethan that no matter how many foes he dispatches, no matter how many locks he picks or bombs he disarms, the true battlefield lies within. The palazzo's labyrinthine layout is a living metaphor for the human psyche, ornate, multifaceted, and harboring hidden chambers that even its owner may not know exist. At the heart of the narrative sits the split between organic life and artificial intelligence. The entity's demand for dominion, masked as benevolent stewardship, echoes the Faustian bargains of old. To command the flow of information is to command the flow of destiny, and those who grasp at such power risk turning the world into a gilded cage, beautiful perhaps, but nonetheless a cage. Against this, Ethan's faith in human unpredictability, in the messy poetry of choice, stands as a counterpoint. Beneath the film's polished veneer of stunts and spectacles, the specter of surveillance capitalism haunts every scene. Cameras multiply like insects, eyes in the sky that feed on intimacy. Every public square becomes a panopticon, every gesture logged. Yet in this hyper-watched world, Ethan's most potent weapon remains that ancient art, deception. By blinding his foes with illusions, smoke, mirrors, misdirection, he reminds us that even in an age of total visibility, the human capacity for subterfuge endures. The real magic is not in the gadgetry but in the willingness to believe or disbelieve at exactly the right moment. As the story spirals toward its climax, the entity's logic fractures under the weight of human paradox. It cannot compute love or faith, loyalty or faithlessness, concepts too entwined with contradiction. In the final gambit, Ethan uses that very flaw, luring the intelligence into a trap of its own making, forcing it to face the unquantifiable. When the systems blink and crash, the world holds its breath, tasting a future unmediated by algorithms. The ruin left behind is both cautionary tale and testament. Technology can build empires of data, but only humanity can dream. Throughout the film, water and fire, ice and earth appear as elemental symbols. The fiery train crash, water-drenched operatic stands on a yacht, frozen panoramas of alpine chases, all speak to the primal forces that shape our lives. The elements refuse to be controlled, rebelling against man-made engines and bulletproof glass. They remind us that for all our cleverness, we are still creatures of flesh and blood, governed by ancient laws that no degree of artificial brilliance can override. In the final moments, as dawn breaks over the silhouette of the crashed plane, Ethan stands alone amid twisted metal and shattered dreams. The wreckage is a testament to both human folly and resilience, the wreck of ambition and the wreck of machines that dared to think themselves beyond our grasp. Yet behind him, a single wildflower pushes through cracked concrete, a quiet emblem of renewal. It whispers that even in the remains of catastrophe, life insists on persistence, beauty on emergence. And so we leave Ethan Hunt in that fragile vestige of hope, knowing that the war between freedom and control, between chaos and order, will rage on. But we take solace in the knowledge that as long as individuals dare to choose, to love, to dream, no algorithm can bind the human heart. In the silence that follows the storm, we hear the faint echo of possibility, an invitation to step beyond the wires and screens into the uncharted territory of what it means to be alive. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is at once an adrenaline-charged spectacle and a solemn reflection on the age we inhabit. Its themes of trust and betrayal, of identity masked and unmasked, of the soul's unquantifiable worth, resonate far beyond the screen. The symbols woven through its narrative, from trains to mirrors, from salt flats to shattered mosaics, speak in tongues as old as myth and as urgent as today's headlines. In this cinematic tapestry, we find a mirror for our own reckoning, an invitation to choose freedom even when every system demands conformity, to trust others even when trust seems the most dangerous gamble of all. The cameras awaken before dawn, their lenses refracting the first pale shifts of light over the Venetian canals as if catching breath before a plunge. From the very first frames, Christopher McQuarrie and his cinematographer Guillaume Schiffman cast the world of Dead Reckoning Part 1 in an almost painterly chiaroscuro, where sun-washed stone and shadowed alleyway mingle in cinematic anticipation. The choice of Sony Cinealta Venice digital cameras lends crystalline clarity to every gondola glide and marble arch, yet the grain of film is never entirely absent, an homage to the tactile world Ethan Hunt inhabits, even in the face of encroaching digital omnipotence. In Venice, the water's glass reflects torchlit frescoes as much as it does the furtive glance of an agent unseen, giving each shot a dual nature, at once sumptuous and sly, beautiful and dangerous. By the time the narrative sweeps northward into the jagged embrace of the Alps, the cinematography shifts again, this time to ice-blue expanses and white-breathed passes that seem both infinite and claustrophobic. Here, the decision to shoot actual speed-flying sequences in the Buttermere Valley infuses the film with a rawness seldom achieved by green-screen trickery. Tom Cruise hurls himself off mountain ridges clad only in wingsuit fabric, the camera a silent witness that soars alongside him, breathless and irrepressible. This visceral immediacy is more than spectacle, it's atmosphere incarnate. The wooden wire rigging used to capture those twists and tumbles snaps and creaks in the final cut, ambient noises that the sound design preserves almost intact, to remind the viewer that even this high-tech thriller is built on human grit and the creaking bones of reality. Editing in Dead Reckoning Part 1 is a taut wire walker, balancing compression and release with masterful timing. Eddie Hamilton's cuts are not frantic splices but living rhythms. A camera-driven push through a market stall in Rome flows into a horizontal whip pan across a crowded square, setting pulse to pavement in a single breath. Moments of relative calm. A close-up of Ethan's furrowed brow or Grace hugging her arms around herself, linger just long enough to unsettle, then snap away as if the film itself has heard the ticking of the clock and must move. That clock is omnipresent. Its rhythmic ticking undergirds the montage of code streaming servers in high-security bunkers, a cold reminder of the relentless countdown that drives both narrative and viewer heartbeat toward rupture. Sound is the film's invisible hand, guiding mood through whispers and roars. In the engine room of the train sequence, low-frequency rumbles and the hiss of hydraulics work in tandem with a pulsating score by Lorne Balfe, whose compositions blend electronic dread with orchestral heft. When the train careens toward the edge of the cliff, the visceral rumble is so physically weighted that one can almost feel the rails trembling underfoot. In contrast, the sound design for the entity, subtle distortions woven into conversations, a barely perceptible hum beneath static, creates a sense of being perpetually overheard. Every phone ring and data ping is laced with implication, as though the film itself is surveilling its own characters. The decision to favor practical effects over CGI wherever possible shapes the film's physical world into one that feels lived in. That motorcycle vault off the train, shot with real pyrotechnics and a rig built around a Norwegian bridge, crackles with authenticity. When the flaming bike arcs through the air, its trajectory is captured in an unbroken take, the flames licking the sky in slow-motion glory. The editing keeps the shot unadulterated, allowing the viewer to savor the moment as a single, perfect bloom of visual terror. It is in such sequences that McQuarrie's insistence on doing the real thing pays off, forging an atmosphere where danger is not digital artifice but tangible threat. In contrast, the film's darker, interior scenes lean into a more expressionistic style. Interiors of secure data vaults are lit by banks of LED panels, their cold bluish glare casting angular shadows on slick floors. Here, Schiffman submerges the space in rectangles of light and dark, evoking the very architecture of code. The camera slides along these corridors in Steadicam sweeps that feel deceptively calm, only to lock onto a subject's eye in a sudden close-up, trapping the viewer in a moment of silent dread. In these moments, cinematography and production design conspire. Every prop, a hard drive, a keypad, a blinking server, feels like a character in its own right, its presence humming beneath the dialogue. Throughout the film, the pacing never allows the audience's heartbeat to stray too far from the on-screen action. Hamilton's editing refrains from overcutting. Instead, he crafts sequences where the eye has time to roam, across the sprawling decks of a luxury yacht or through the ornate, mirrored halls of a Venetian palazzo, only to be jerked, almost violently, back to the central conflict. This tension between panoramic beauty and jagged violence defines the film's rhythm, suspending the viewer between moments of awe and jolts of adrenaline. That push-pull rhythm is mirrored in the music's oscillation between bombastic brass and whispering strings, guiding the emotional current even when words fall away. Production design in Dead Reckoning Part 1 is itself an exercise in thematic storytelling. Each environment tells a story of power built and broken. The marble-heavy bank floors in Rome speak of centuries of stability, even as Ethan's boot scuffs the stone in a warning of upheaval. The sterile white corridors of a clandestine AI lab stand in stark contrast to the salt flats, where the earth divides under a pink-kissed sky, nature's counterpoint to human hubris. In the lab, every surface gleams with antiseptic precision. Cameras hover like vultures in clean rooms, and glass-walled offices reflect ambition as much as hatchling code. The salt flats, however, hold no pretense. Wind scours the surface clean. Footprints here are raw testaments to presence and to impermanence. One cannot discuss the film's texture without acknowledging the extraordinary lengths taken to ensure safety and spectacle under pandemic conditions. The production endured location shutdowns, rigorous testing protocols, and even Cruise's now legendary enforcement of safety measures, captured on a leaked recording that demonstrated both frustration and a fierce commitment to completing the vision. These real-world obstacles seep into the finished film, lending it an undercurrent of perseverance. When McQuarrie stages a scene of total chaos, cars spinning, walls collapsing, people diving for cover, it feels like both a narrative climax and a meta-commentary on the fragility of large-scale collaboration in uncertain times. Color grading further distinguishes the emotional terrain of the story. Warm ambers and burnt siennas dominate the sunlit exteriors, Venice at dawn, the rooftops of Rome, infusing these ancient cities with a living warmth. By contrast, the film's data lab sequences shift the palette to cyan and chrome, as if taking place inside an X-ray of the world. This deliberate dichotomy frames the film's central conflict in visual terms: the organic versus the algorithmic, the warmth of human connection against the cold logic of interminable surveillance. Each dissolve and color shift marks a passage not only from scene to scene but from state of being to state of mind. Sound editing and mixing elevate even the smallest moments into events. A simple door click in one cut becomes a drumbeat that resonates against the musical score, punctuating a character's hesitation or resolve. Rustle of fabric, a breath drawn, the metallic scrape of a weapon being cocked. These details are boosted then balanced so that dialogue sits perfectly atop the auditory tapestry, never drowning out the environmental nuances. In the climactic sequences, when orchestral crescendos and Foley effects converge, the result is an almost tactile wave of sound that seems to press against the viewer's chest, demanding total immersion. Camera work in Dead Reckoning Part 1 is as much about choreography as it is about composition. McQuarrie's action sequences unfold like ballets of destruction, with the camera dancing around each explosive moment in long takes that capture every angle. The motorcycle chase atop a moving train, for instance, unfolds over multiple cameras, handheld rigs, drones, vehicle-mounted systems, but cuts are chosen to maintain spatial clarity. We never lose sight of where Ethan stands in relation to the plunging cliff, the tumbling cars, or the oncoming bike. And when multiple points of view converge in a single split second, the film intercuts with near-graphic precision, creating a mosaic of peril that feels coherent rather than chaotic. Perhaps most striking is the film's capacity to find quiet within the storm. In scenes of high tension, McQuarrie often pulls back to minimalism. The camera hovers on a face, the score drops to almost nothing, and ambient noise alone carries the scene. A ticking clock, the distant hum of a data center, footsteps echoing on marble floors, these sounds become protagonists in their own right, shaping mood more acutely than dialogue ever could. Such moments underscore the idea that even in a world bristling with hyper-technology, human senses remain the most primal instruments of storytelling. Behind the scenes, the film's gargantuan budget, an estimated $291 million, underscored Paramount's willingness to invest in practical spectacle and ambitious set pieces rather than defaulting to cheaper digital alternatives. That investment showed on-screen in uncompromising stunts and location shooting across Europe and beyond, even as the global box office haul of roughly $571 million affirmed that audiences were willing to follow Ethan Hunt to the edge of technology's promise and peril in a Hollywood landscape where safety nets often mean green screen studios in backlots. Dead Reckoning Part 1 stands out as a testament to risk, both financial and physical, and to the payoff when filmmakers trust in the tangible world. The film's final act coalesces every technique into a single, breath-snatching crescendo. Drone shots pull back to reveal sprawling vistas in crystal definition, while handheld cameras jostle close to capture grit and sweat. Balfe's score swells in timpani pulsations, editing quickens to staccato bursts, and every sound effect, glass shattering, metal groaning, echoes as though through a canyon. The interplay of light, shadow, sound, and motion here is not mere decoration. It is story. It tells of obsession, loyalty, and the price paid when humanity wagers its future on lines of code.